notice Goliath-sized challenges often feel hopeless because overcoming them seems impossible? Self-reliance will never defeat giants. God-reliance, on the other hand, makes the seemingly impossible possible. On this season of the Challenges Won't Stop Me podcast, gain insights and inspiration as guests share how God equipped and empowered them to overcome their giant-sized challenges with powerful God-reliant strategies, habits, mindsets, and fight verses. With God fighting for you, you too can overcome Goliath-sized challenges. Host Melanie Brown is eager to get started. So let's go!
Today's guest is my friend Kim Todd. She was drawn to the DC Comics character Wonder Woman when she was just a kid. An invisible jet, superpowers. What's not to love? In case you never watched the show, Wonder Woman was a fierce yet gentle woman depending on the situation, protecting the vulnerable from attackers while nurturing those she loved. As you listen to Kim's story, you'll see how Kim embodies those same traits. She may not wear Wonder Woman's super cool costume, but to those who know her, she is indeed a protector of the vulnerable and a nurturer of those she loves. Please join my conversation with Kim Todd. Today is a special day because I am interviewing my good friend, Kim Todd. So welcome, Kim.
Thank you. I feel welcomed, and I am excited and honored to be here.
I've been looking forward to this because I know your story, and I know how powerful it is and how God has shown up time and time and time again. And I cannot wait for the listeners to hear it. So we're going to get started. Let's go back to when you were a wee bitty teenager. You had some health issues, and then there was a diagnosis that followed. Tell me about that.
At 17, I was diagnosed with endometriosis, very severe, and immediately started seeing a specialist who told me it would be very unlikely that I could ever conceive children, which hit me hard because I wanted to be a mom.
At 17, you're kind of like, well, maybe that's a little far away, but if you've dreamed about being a mom, then you can already think ahead and know what that could potentially look like.
Yes.
How did that impact you going forward?
Like you said, I was 17, so I was nowhere near ready to have children. I did know the Lord, but I was not walking with the Lord at that time. So it was just something that kind of stayed in the back of my mind, of course, until I met the person that I wanted to marry.
Did you and your future husband, did you discuss it?
Oh, we discussed it a lot, yes.
And how did he feel about that?
He also wanted to start a family, so we prayed fervently and started right away after we got married because the doctor I was seeing said the sooner the better.
Because you probably have a very tiny window.
Exactly, yeah, to conceive.
What was that journey like? How long did it take?
We were married at 24. We were both 24, and we started trying right away. It wasn't happening, and this was the early 90s, so insurance didn't cover these new experimental fertility drugs, so we knew that wasn't an option. We were just hanging in there, trying the old-fashioned way.
And your husband, Troy, was like, this is great!
But each month would be hard because you see people around you pregnant and you want it so much. And then each month it's not happening, not happening, not happening. There was a sadness there.
Sure.
And just this agonizing want and waiting on God to answer.
And how long before anything changed?
Well, it was an amazing Wednesday night. We were going to church and we had a couple that were mentoring us. And I think we were really pouring our hearts out and about us trying and wanting to have children, and this was a great couple, and they said, well, let's just go anoint you with some oil in the fellowship hall and see what happens. They did, and it was a beautiful time of sort of communion with like-minded people and with God, and I went home and went about my business, and the next month, lo and behold, I was pregnant.
Go God.
Yes. So, yeah, it was just could be God. It could only be God. And we knew all the glory went to God. It was so, I don't know, it was exhilarating spiritually because it was God saying, I'm here for you.
I like that. Talk to me about your conversations with God when you guys were struggling. Were you mad? Were you pleading? How did those conversations in prayer go with God? And then how did it affect you that the answer was no? Not just seeing everyone around you, but like God saying no. And as we know, no could mean no, but it could also mean not yet, which is what it meant.
I think it was such a time for me growing and sitting with the Holy Spirit as my friend, because my friend could take it when I was angry. My friend could take it when I was sad. Not only just sit there and listen to me, but comfort me in that sadness, comfort me in that anger even. Almost be angry with me. Yes, I know you're angry, but it was not the right time. And we definitely needed to be growing more, not only spiritually, but we needed to be growing financially. We needed to be in a place where those things were covered in a monetary sense. So it just felt like growing closer to a friend, those conversations.
How was the waiting? Did you get frustrated with that?
Yes. And looking back on it now, we waited 2 years, which now 2 years doesn't seem like anything.
That's because we've gotten older and wiser, Kim.
At 58, 2 years is nothing. At 24, 25, it seems like eons.
And it seems unbearable.
Yes.
Yes.
And then it happened, and it was so glorious, and we were just so grateful. The gratitude muscle was definitely strengthened.
Yes. So your first son is named
Daniel.
And then how long before you had your second son?
We had our second son when Daniel was 22 months old, so I didn't even quite have a 2-year-old. And we had William, and we were rehabbing our first house, so it was a little difficult.
Chaotic.
Yeah, chaos, yes. All that chaos practice is great when you have children, right? Because it's going to be even more coming up.
Yes.
And then 18 months later, I found out I was pregnant with my third son, Samuel. It was just glorious blessings, but that's a lot of kids to have in a course of 3 years. I would always say, I prayed for this. I prayed for this.
Yes,
I
you
prayed
did,
for
Kim.
this. I asked for this. I begged for this. The third child was a little, hey, wait a minute, I have 3 little ones. But now I look back and I see God's hand in everything. And really didn't have to wait that long. My third child was maybe 3 or 4. It was so clear what God was doing.
Isn't it interesting how you can look back and you can say, how did I not see that? God was working and this happened and then he put this together. And then when you look back, you're thinking, wow, God. But in the moment, you don't see it and you're frustrated. God, why are you not answering my prayers? Why are things not happening? But they are. And we have to be reminded of that. And that's why, to me, it's very powerful to spend time looking back occasionally. Don't get stuck there, but occasionally look back and see, and even record, have a journal. And I love to record how I see God now in this day and time as to how he was working in things in my past.
We have to retell those stories over and over, not only to other people to encourage them, but to ourselves.
Let's talk about your boys as they grew up. Was it easy childhood? Just normal, made all of the milestones, just smoothing right along?
I had great labor and delivery, and then it wasn't so smooth after all. It was chaotic after that. Of course, Daniel was almost 2 when William was born. Then I remember having William on my hip, and Daniel was 4, and I was pregnant with Samuel. And we had this fantastic pediatrician who noticed a murmur and sent us, just to make sure everything was okay, to a pediatric cardiologist. I remember that moment of holding one, being very pregnant with another, and then Daniel on the machine, and this doctor showing me where he had this leaking valve and some distortion of the aorta, and him telling me what this would mean for his future. He won't be able to play sports, and he won't be able to do this, and he won't be able to do that, or he has to be careful doing those things to just be able to take that information in as a pregnant mom.
Yeah, it kind of dashes their dreams
Yeah.
or your dreams for your son
Right.
to say, well, he can't do this and he can't do that. Well, he could, but you got to put him in a bubble kind of
Right.
thing.
This is my firstborn. He's the one I'm practicing on for all these other ones.
Let me just get it right on the first one.
What exactly do I do here? What does this mean for my family and my future?
Right.
And my son's future?
How did the news about Daniel and the possible heart issues impact you, especially as it pertains to your relationship with God?
One thing my husband said to me is, well, he belongs to God, not to us.
I like it. Go, Troy.
So, yeah, God brought him into existence, and there's a plan for him no matter what happens. And I think as a mom, I was more worried, and my husband had a rosier disposition. Plus, he already had a lot of medical training already just because of his field. And he was very optimistic about, oh, that's okay. We're going to do this and this and this. And he was correct. There were certain things we could do. Daniel maybe didn't play organized sports, but that kid never stopped. And he was on the go all the time. So it was just a blessing to have someone there to say, hey, it's okay. This is just something we monitor.
Yes.
And as we monitored it, it never got worse. The doctors would always say, this is only going to get worse. Well, it never got worse.
Praise
God. It just
God.
continued to stay, and he was a healthy child.
Did your other sons have any health conditions?
At 3, my second son, really before then, but at 3, I started noticing a lot of things about William that would indicate autism, which was back in 95. Not everybody knew a lot about autism.
And I did just barely because of my special ed degree. So how did you know about it?
This is another God story. Going way back to college, I remember I had a class, or it was a research paper class. This will be your research paper. I don't care if you never come to class again. All you got to do is turn this in. And I popped up, took the first topic, which was autism, and wrote my paper and turned it in. And it was a very in-depth paper, so I learned a lot about autism. I already had this knowledge, and every day I would say, Lord, thank you for giving me that paper. Thank you for me taking the very first topic on the list. So I saw those things. And of course, you have to go through this whole litany of tests. You know, a lot of doctors said, maybe it's his hearing, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Then it was just a series of testing and doctor's appointments and therapies to finally get the diagnosis of, at that time, Asperger's syndrome,
right.
which has now come under the DSM-5 as autism spectrum disorder.
Right. Tell me, what kinds of things did you see in his behavior or his speech that coincided with what you had learned during your research about autism?
Well, one thing was he sort of shut down speech-wise. He could say a few words and then just completely shut down, but was a lot more open at home. He was not in preschool, of course, at 3, but we would go to church, and I would notice a lot of things there that were signs socially that he just wasn't hitting those milestones socially.
Mm-hmm. How old was he when he was diagnosed?
He was diagnosed at 5, so that had been a 2-year journey from 3 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
As we were getting that diagnosis, I thought, well, Daniel has a lot of these behaviors, but he's very verbal. So took him to be tested as well, and he was very high functioning, but had some of the Asperger's traits as well.
So Daniel, your first son, was diagnosed second.
Correct.
William, your second son, was diagnosed first, but your first 2 sons
Are on the spectrum.
are on the spectrum. How did that impact their education and then you as their mom?
Well, going back to when we were anointed with oil, that sweet couple was a homeschool couple, and Troy and I had already prayed and felt like God had said, homeschool it's what I'm calling you to. It is a ministry that I was called to. So Daniel was 7 when he was diagnosed, so I had already started school with him. The diagnosis was tough, but because we had already gotten one for William, it sort of opened a lot of doors for Daniel because he was already showing some signs of just needing some special help, more on the learning disability line. He was very social, very verbal, very bright, but was struggling with some things. So it opened the door for me to go, okay, wait a minute, there's a disability here. I don't have to take the traditional route. I can look for better things for him. It's a struggle when you homeschool.
Sure. I have a master's degree in education, and I wouldn't take that on unless God said to.
I had sort of been pushing the traditional way of learning. God said, I think you need to see things through some different lenses.
So what did that lead you to?
It led me to reaching out for help. I got a lot of help from the Georgia Homeschool Education Association, just researching things, finding tutors, finding support, finding a community.
Learning strategies that work, I guess, okay for kids that don't have any kind of struggle,
Yes.
but are key to kids who have struggles.
Exactly.
Because those kids don't learn the same way.
Exactly. Sometimes it was just as simple as putting like a colored film over the paper, because he was probably a little bit colorblind, which is not something I would ever think of had I not been doing research into Asperger's autism.
So sweet little Samuel comes
Yes.
along. Did he have any kind of issues himself?
I see he was born to be a help for William, number one. Well, he was born to be who God told him to be, but he was such an incredible support system for his older brother because he developed very quickly. I think sometimes as I was homeschooling, he was just picking it up very quickly. Now, he does have some tiny symptoms that are associated with the spectrum. He does not have an official diagnosis, but what I did also is we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of medical coverage. So I used to go and volunteer for every study that I could at the Sidney Marcus Centers. They would have the whole family come in. So they would bring Samuel in, they would bring my husband in, me, they would do all sorts of tests. So I learned to network and find things. And I think through all that early intervention, he just blossomed.
That's brilliant, Kim. Seriously, that's brilliant. Take advantage of the resources.
Yes. I even would find young people that were in college for like special needs or speech therapy or whatever, and have them come in, and I could pay them very little. They could also use what they were doing for their papers. They could use my sons as examples for their papers and things. So I learned to just work with people and see what worked and throw out what didn't. I think because I had already gone through that process with the first two, Samuel learned to just kind of go with the flow and learn as you go.
Yeah. Tell me about their end of, I guess, traditional school. Did any of them or all of them go on to military or further education?
Daniel and Samuel both went on to Chattahoochee Tech, and then Samuel finished at Kennesaw. Daniel was at Chattahoochee Tech, and then he quit to work for a while, and then was going back in 2020. But by that time, he had moved out. William, because he is more affected by his autism.
So his is on, on the spectrum, his is more significant than the other
Correct.
two.
And delayed development being one of the largest ones.
Okay.
So at 16, he was more like 10 years old.
Okay.
So when it was time for college, he wasn't ready. But he worked and he lived with his brothers for a while and just grew. We also were plugged into a lot of things for young adults with autism.
Mm-hmm.
I would try to find all those social opportunities, growth opportunities, classes. He did graduate from high school with everything.
Right.
William took all the tests and standardized tests, and he does have a high school diploma.
So what is Samuel's degree in?
Samuel's degree is in accounting.
Nice.
Yes. And great job in accounting and just bought a house.
You mentioned 2020, and that's a ugly word, ugly set of numbers for all of us, but most especially for your family. Tell me about that.
So in 2020, Daniel was working. He had worked for 9 years and did a great job, but decided he wanted more skills to move forward, and he wanted to go into collision repair for automobiles, and had gone back to Chattahoochee Tech to get a degree as a specialist. But he began to get really sick right around April of 2020, which is when everything was starting. We were very concerned and talked to his cardiologist via telehealth, and we needed to get a CT, but because he had a fever and he's lost a lot of weight, if you had a fever, you weren't allowed on campus. So we're just kind of scrambling. Again, he's living on his own, but he came to us and said, listen, I can't get an appointment. What do we do? Saw some urgent care doctors, tried to get a diagnosis, and finally had a appointment set so that he could be cleared to get a CT, because again, he would get a CT every year because of the heart valves as maintenance. Well, before he could get cleared at this appointment, he had a massive stroke.
Where was he?
He actually had a house that he'd been living in for about 9 years, and at this time, both of his brothers had moved in, and they were his roommates. So we get a call from William that something's happened to Daniel, so we rush over there. He had been in the shower. He had fallen, so there was some blood, but from his face, I could tell that it was a stroke. And again, it's 2020, so
Good luck.
yeah, when the ambulance gets there, of course, I can't be in the ambulance with him because of COVID restrictions. He looked okay, but he couldn't walk. It was a left side stroke, so his whole right side was gone. He had lost the ability to speak completely.
So he couldn't even tell you.
He could say a few words, but they made no sense. They call me from the emergency room. I'm letting this nurse know he's not usually like this. He usually can speak. Could you start the stroke protocol? She said it was not something they usually do. So then the doctor called me back and said, why do you think it's a stroke? And I told her, and they did the stroke protocol, and it was a stroke.
Why did they not typically do it? Because of his age?
Yeah.
Okay.
They had no idea
Been
that
there,
it would have
done
been a
that.
stroke. Yeah. They did the stroke protocol, and it turns out that this illness that he'd been going through was a blood infection, possibly from working on a car, or after the fact, the doctor said it could have been anything from flossing your teeth and getting a blood infection that way or whatever. The hard part was when he had something called a TEE, where they looked at his heart valves and they were covered in bacteria, and that's what had flung to his brain, was a mass of bacteria. The concern then there was both of the valves had been so damaged, it was clear that he was in danger heart-wise.
Yeah. So we've got two significant issues going on.
Correct.
The heart issue from childhood that has been fine, fine,
Yes.
that obviously wasn't fine, but he couldn't tell that because he couldn't
Right.
get his regular yearly
Right.
tests because of COVID.
Right.
My thought would be if he had been able to take that test,
Yes.
they would have seen it and
Right.
gotten him treatment immediately.
It was a blood infection, so they would have seen that buildup of bacteria
Right.
immediately on his heart. Yes.
But then that in turn caused the stroke at 26 years old, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He's in the emergency room, unable to talk, and all of this is happening.
We did have a very good friend who was a nurse who called me immediately when she found out, because my son William put out the prayers, was texting people. And
Pray for my brother Daniel.
I pray for my brother Daniel, and William is a prayer warrior for sure. Friend called me because she was a nurse, and she told me to call the hospital and inform them that Daniel was on spectrum, and then they would have to let Troy in. Troy was able to go in with.
Talk about the days afterwards and what that looked like.
Well, the day afterward, I tell you, that's where my kingdom community came into play. I put out a prayer to my church. People came and we had to social distance and pray outside, but it was just so clear, so tangible that the Spirit was there. God's Spirit was working.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't share this with everybody, but I just said, we need prayer. We could see Troy at the window. He came to the window. Troy had told me we were on like a 72-hour watch of the heart may not make it.
Wow.
So he needed to get through that 3 days. And then, of course, it's going to be an even longer recovery from there. What they had to do was start the protocol to get rid of the blood infection. So he had to have infusions and then all the post-stroke therapies.
What was the prognosis?
For those 3 days, it was 50-50. I was outside the hospital and two couples were around me. We had people on the phone. I could look up and see people on our staff at our church that were praying for me. And at one point I was like, who's making that noise? Who's crying like that? You know, what is that noise? And it was me. It was just this wail. It was prayer.
Yeah.
It was that wailing prayer. It was that agony of my heart is breaking.
The Holy Spirit intercedes and he translates that to God.
But even in the midst of that, the peace that passes understanding, to open my eyes and look and see, even though they were far away, people praying for me, praying for my son, my kingdom family coming together.
Let's go there, Kim. How did this impact your faith? It had to have shaken your faith. Talk about your conversations with God, what he grew in you, or how he sustained you during that time.
God goes before us, right? He goes before us to fight our battles.
It says it over and over and over in the Bible. When you're in that moment, it's hard to see that because we can't see that.
Yes.
We have to believe it.
I remember being in the car with all three of my sons, and we just had to go by the pharmacy, right? Again, they're all grown.
So this is when? When did this
would
happen?
be, I would say this is about 2018, and it was a Holy Spirit moment. And the pharmacist, this sweet young lady, looked at the car and she said, "Oh, I bet you always feel safe," because she saw these big, strong men around me. But because of what I had gone through as a mom of special needs, I was always worried. I always felt unsafe. God was so clear, and he started from that moment on. He goes, you are in a spirit of fear, and that's not where I want you to be.
Ugh.
My daughter needs more.
Yeah.
As I'm praying through that, my church offers this inductive Bible study. I signed up for that class. And through that 9 months of being in that class and just being in the Word and being with God and going deeper, not just scholarly deep, but emotionally deep. The moment in the pharmacy line prompted me to get out of a spirit of fear, and then God led me to take this class. So this is all before the pandemic.
So he's going before you.
Yes, he's
Clearly.
going before me. And through that process, the stronghold of fear was taken down, and there was just a new resilience I had. Of course, life was still hard, but I wasn't trapped. I wasn't
listening to the enemy's voice.
right. I wasn't. Before then, I was working at half speed in the kingdom because I was weighted down.
That's very powerful. Weighted down by fear.
Yeah,
And
it was
then
like a ball and
therefore-
chain. Yeah,
And then, therefore, that prevents you from living fully for God.
right.
Wow, Kim.
It prevented me from receiving what he had for me in my heart. Not that my life was bad, but I wasn't fully receiving from him. So through this class, I was fully receiving. And then, boom, Daniel's stroke. And the uncertainty and the heartbreak and the agony. But yet, because he had gone before and prompted me to do that, and I had obeyed him, there was a closeness that I felt to him, even when I was crying out in agony and those nights alone, because he ended up being in the hospital for 30 days. And then just seeing every day and hearing the reports, how God was coming through, but yet it was still incredibly hard.
Sure.
I don't even know if you could put it into words. It's those two things living together, heartbreak and comfort at the same time, heartbreak and hope at the same time, living there in that same space. And knowing that I had done this work in God's Word, I knew I had Him, God, with me, no matter what the outcome was. The outcome could have been horrible, but He'd still be with me.
I love how you said that he goes before you, and then you're now ending on he was with you through it all. And he didn't take away the hard for you or the hard for Daniel. He was with you. I think sometimes we get mad at God. Some sort of really hard challenge happens, and we want him to take it away.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't say that he's going to take it away. He says, I will be with you. I will fight for you. I will give you peace that passes understanding. I will strengthen you. All the things that he promises in his word. We need to be in those challenges to learn about him, but also for us to grow. And I know in our many conversations that you've shared about all the ways that you have grown from your son's challenge.
Absolutely.
One of the ways that you've grown is that you developed a fight verse, which is something I believe in very strongly. Would you please share your fight verse?
My fight verse is Psalm 144:1. Blessed be the Lord, my rock and my great strength, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle.
Okay, so Warrior Kim over there, why did you pick that fight verse?
Well, of course, it's not my physical hands or my physical fingers. It was my spiritual fingers, what I reach out with spiritually to not just receive from God, but to give back. So it was a battle to sit still and receive from God so that I could give to my son who could not speak, who was struggling with confusion and anger, traumatic brain injury at this point, and then went through heart surgery afterwards. We had to decide, when do we do this heart surgery, because he needed both valves and his aorta replaced.
Wow.
To go under anesthesia that long after
A massive
stroke is very dangerous. And it's still 2020, y'all.
Which, I'm sorry, that just like challenge upon challenge upon challenge upon hugest challenge.
In October of 2020, he underwent open heart surgery. And you want to talk about leaning on the Lord and praying and being all alone. They did let me wait in a room, but nobody else could be with me
Yeah.
because it was 2020. But there was somebody with me.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Tell us about your 3 sons now. Say their name and their
Okay.
age now, and give us an update on them.
Daniel is now 32, and he is speaking, still has to go through speech therapy, but communicates, smiles, laughs, prays, and talks about how God was with him. What a testimony.
Yes.
He's driving again, working again.
Wow.
And he strives and he prays through it and does it. And I'm so proud of him.
Yes.
William is 30 and he is on fire for God, loves the Lord. His best friend is his grandmother and spends tons of time with her.
I love that.
And they are just the best buds. And he is striving to be more social and make friends and get a job and do things. And he's on his way to doing it.
Yes.
And Samuel has a great job as an accountant and just bought a house and helps to take care of his grandmother and also loves the Lord.
Well, Kim, this has been fabulous. What a testimony to God in so many ways. I'm so glad that the listeners are getting to hear your story. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell it. I love you.
I love you too, friend.